Hello, welcome to the WW3 show. I am Scott McMahon. A little under the weather, but I'm going to just power through it. And there's a lot to cover and a lot of stuff that I've been working on and kind of collecting over the last weeks, but especially over the last week and a half. And about a week and a half ago, Patrick Byrne announced to the world that he is CIA. And we're going to cover that. We're going to look at how that relates to the Tina Peters situation, what I reported on last week on biggertruthmedia.com regarding the only way to free Tina Peters, and talk about a few things that I'm working on in that regard right now and how you could help. And then we're also going to show how that all ties into Venezuela. And it is all connected. It's very much all connected. And there's a lot here. So get ready, strap in. There's been a lot. There's a lot of vindication for me personally in my reporting over the last 2 years, where I've been talking about and showing how I believe that this is a intelligence community operation that Flynn and Patrick Byrne have been running within state GOPs, within churches, in the influencer network, and also running various entrapment schemes, including on Tina Peters, they attempted it on Stacey Burke, and now the next up, we're going to talk about that a little bit too, is Stephanie Scott here in Michigan, which is she's a clerk in Hillsdale, Michigan, and Stephanie Lambert was her attorney and advised her to do some really bad things. You can actually substitute, you just switch out a couple names and you've got the exact same story as Tina Peters. And fortunately, it hasn't gone to trial yet, but it will soon. And based on what I understand about their current defense strategy, I believe that Stephanie Scott is going to be going to prison, just like Tina Peters. And they will all say the same exact things about her that they do about Tina Peters and try to make her another martyr just to strengthen our belief that it's all rigged and what's the point in anything. That the judicial system's rigged, the electoral system's rigged, all of that. So let's get in, and I'm just going to first show how this really started at almost 1 o'clock in the morning on last Monday. And then on Monday, just hours later, he shows up on Emerald Robinson's show, Patrick Byrne does, and announces to the world that he is CIA. So here's what he posted just a little bit before, as you can see, 12:47 a.m., December 8th. He says, stay tuned. I've got permission to release something. Let me just prepare it. So just a few hours later, he shows up on Emerald Robinson's show.
That's huge. That's 2 huge bombshells right now. But I can't ignore the third. You just told us that you are CIA, sir. So how would you describe your role with the CIA, which you haven't revealed before?
Well, again, I was telling the truth when I said they frequently was reminded that you have a really non-standard relationship. It became kind of my mother relationship. I had lots of relationships across the government, but eventually I went from there to by 2010, 2011, Obama, I became something called a tier 1 intelligence asset. And then in 2010, 2011, Obama elevated me to national intelligence asset. I was told it was going to be.
Okay, so just to repeat, he says he was a tier 1 intelligence asset, and then Obama, and what he says personally, it sounds like personally, elevated him to a national intelligence asset, which he says is a higher level than tier 1. And that was in 2010. So he was an Obama guy.
The ace in the hole for all kinds of, for the real tough situations.
So he was a dark ops CIA asset that would do the things that an actual government asset couldn't do.
2010, that was after working for Brennan for 4 or 5 years. And then I continued doing all that stuff through 2016. And all this crazy stuff happened that I've told you about, where we set up the Russian hoax. That's why, I've
Okay, he just admitted to helping to set up the Russian hoax, and he said we. And I've argued extensively that that Flynn was very much involved in that. And I've also showed, one parallel that's very interesting is that Patrick Byrne admits in his book and in his movie thing that this really lame series that Flynn helped to produce, that he tried to set up Donald Trump Jr., with Maria Butina, who was this Russian spy that he knew was a Russian spy, and that he was having a romantic relationship, Patrick Byrne was, because Brennan and Comey instructed him to. It sounds absolutely absurd, but this is his story. Unfortunately, Don Jr. just didn't show up to that meeting and blew Maria Butina off. He probably got some intel not to, or something, I'm not sure, or maybe something came up, but whatever it is, it's good that Don Jr. didn't show up to that meeting. But Flynn actually helped to arrange meetings between Don Jr. and Jared Kushner and some Russian businessmen, and that were used against him, and that just helped to build their Russiagate case. And so it's interesting that they both were doing very similar activities, and I believe that they were both led by the intelligence community, and whether or not they were working together at that point, I don't know, but they were certainly working in tandem, in my view. I mean, they were doing similar kinds of things. So we'll let Patrick go on with the story.
I mean, I've talked around it because I was trying to hide that, but I've told these stories about how I got drawn into setting up the Russian hoax and the Hillary this and that. There was a little bit of fibbing there. I didn't want to explain the whole truth.
Okay, so he just admitted that he's a liar. So he's admitted to being a liar, to being a covert dark ops CIA operative under Obama, having taken orders from Brennan. He's saying now that this ended in 2016, but I 100% believe that that is another lie, that he is still in every way taking orders from the CIA. Just as that that post on X just hours before said, it really indicated very strongly. So he's still taking orders from somebody. He got permission from somebody to share this, to at least to share this part of the story, and to change his story. So, a person whose story continuously changes is probably lying in various ways. And so that's kind of what we're seeing here from Patrick Byrne. Let's go on.
The whole truth. I was doing that. I didn't just stumble into it. I was their go-to asset. I was the national intelligence asset. First, I got pulled under Brennan in 2006, and then 2011, I got moved into the White House. That's why I got mixed up in the Russian collusion and the Hillary stuff.
And there's actually a docu-series that General Michael Flynn produced about your life story, and this will make more sense now that you've shared this information if you go back and watch that docu-series. But why are you sharing?
What's interesting is that Emerald Robinson doesn't seem at all surprised about any of this. If she were a journalist, if she were just an actual journalist and not CIA herself, then I would imagine her jaw would be hitting the floor, and she would probably try to get him off of her show as quickly as possible. If somebody were coming on my show and unbeknownst to me releasing this information, claiming that he was a dark ops CIA operative and admitting to various crimes, like, I'd want him off my show. I wouldn't want to risk in any way being viewed as an accessory to those crimes. But, she just seems very comfortable with all this.
Sharing this information now, Patrick, as we're looking at Venezuela and we're talking about our rigged elections, it seems to me that you feel that this is an important part of you that you need to let the people know. Why?
I've danced around long enough, and it's not working. And the regret of my life is that I spent the first Trump term trying to dance around within my constraints. Buffett said, Patrick, when I went to see him.
So this is Warren Buffett that he's talking about, who is his godfather. Okay. Now, I've talked about this at length. Patrick Byrne is, I believe, a lifelong communist. He took his first job for the CCP at 17. His college theses were on Marxism and Maoism. He speaks fluent Mandarin. In sometime around 2010 or so, Vice News did a little documentary thing, and he allowed them into his Utah ski chalet, and right in the foyer is this giant painting of Mao Zedong, And he introduces his two cats, and one of them to the reporters from Vice News, and one of them is named Che Guevara. Che Guevara is the revolutionary that's really famous among communists because he really helped to enable the communist revolution in Cuba, and he was close friends with Fidel Castro. So, yeah, that's the name of his cat. Libertarians don't name their cat Che Guevara. Sorry, he's not a libertarian. He is, I absolutely believe, a lifelong communist, and very close to China, and we're going to get into that more soon as well.
Him, who was like my rabbi, said, "Pastor, just go on television and tell everything." And I just said I couldn't do that, but I went and told enough, trying to shape. And I've had enough. We're having insurrection. We have an insurrection going on. People calling, these people calling, and don't you hate how?
Okay, so both Flynn and Byrne have been talking about how there's an insurrection going on right now, that there's a color revolution happening right now, and this was an automatic and coordinated response, not just from these two, in response to the video that came out of 6 different senators, Democrat senators, all with CIA or intelligence backgrounds, who put out a video telling active duty service members to disobey unlawful orders if they receive them. And so in coordinated fashion, that was the red meat that the Democrats gave to Flynn. This is a back and forth that I've documented quite a bit, where the Democrats and Flynn very frequently work together. The Democrats create an impetus. Flynn has a pre-scripted response to that impetus, and so his pre-scripted response is color revolution, and he's talking about all the things that he claims only the Democrats are doing, but he's doing it. He's describing to a T what he is doing as far as the psyops, the insurgency. This is an insurgency within MAGA and even within Trump's administration. And to a degree, it is working, as I will show.
That they say, well, we're not saying disobey Trump. We're just saying that if he gives you illegal orders, which theoretically, then it's time for you to disobey Trump. So I want to tell people in the military who I know watch your show that theoretically, if you have officers, generals or colonels who try to get you to take part in a color revolution, please kill them for us citizens. Just shoot them in the face. We'll appreciate it. Theoretically.
Oh my gosh. So there he is actually going way beyond what the Democrat people did, of course. And he's telling active duty servicemen and women to shoot their COs in the face if they are telling them to to do something illegal, or to disobey orders, even to disobey Trump's orders. So this is clear. This is what they do. They're accelerationists. They're escalationists. They're trying to escalate and promote violence. So you could say, and I've seen Democrats argue, that Patrick Byrne is just high on drugs. And sure, his eyes are all puffy. He looks red. He's talking really fast. He looks like he's on drugs. And from what I understand from talking to people who have had direct firsthand experience with Patrick, that he is on drugs a lot, and uppers, downers, whatever. And so, yeah, I'm sure that is a factor. I'm sure he was on drugs, but that doesn't mean that it's not true. And so let me just show a few other things here. Okay, so this is from biggertruthmedia.com. And I published this December 4th, 2024, so just over a year ago. And this is in the archive for my subscribers only. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I would very much appreciate it, especially with some of the things that I'm working on right now. It's going to cost quite a bit of money, actually, to do some of the things that I'm doing. And I can't talk in detail about it yet, but I do believe that this is very important and will have an impact. I would very much appreciate your support. If you're already a subscriber, you can give the gift of a subscription to someone else. And so that's a way to introduce somebody else to my work and also to support me in what I'm doing. And I would very much appreciate that. So and now's obviously a good time to do that with Christmas coming. So if you have any last minute people on your list that you don't know what to give them, and they're interested in politics and they're really interested in knowing what's really going on, what's the truth behind the lies that we're told, and helping to decipher all that, I'd love to welcome them into the family. And that's a great gift to give. So, and I would very much appreciate it. Okay. So, this story, it's a little bit of a side story, but there's some very pertinent information. So if to the argument that he's just on drugs and he's lying, it was just another lie from Patrick Byrne, he's not really CIA. Let's just dig a little deeper. So this story is Patrick Byrne's attorney, Stephanie Lambert, admits in legal filing she's worked for law enforcement while filing failed election integrity suits. So, she has filed many, I believe, designed to fail suits. Stephanie Lambert is also one that is very likely going to prison for arranging to take election machines outside of counties to do an independent audit investigation without legal authority to do so. Now, Matt DePerno did one on Antrim County. He's really the only one who got a victory after the 2020 election. That was, he got the court to grant discovery on the machines. And he has been indicted, but not for what he did with the Antrim machines. And what he did there was completely legal. And it's my hope and prayer that Matt will be vindicated. I think that he definitely was not a witting participant in what happened, and I think he very much was set up as well. But that's a story for another day. Stephanie Lambert, similar case. She's going to trial in March. From what I've been told, she is planning on making her defense. Peter Tickton is her attorney. Peter Tickton is Tina Peters' appellate attorney. And they are planning on trying to make her trial into a circus show trial to litigate over the 2020 election. It's not good. And the jury instructions have already been determined, partly through bad lawyering on her and her attorney's behalf. The jury instructions are definitely not in her favor, and I believe it's extremely likely that she's going to be going to prison. But in one of the filings in this case last year, she actually said that she was, or her attorney said that she was working on behalf of law enforcement in Michigan, which is a very odd claim. It doesn't say what law enforcement. It's a very odd claim. So that's what this story is about. But I included in here 2 videos that I think are very important because it shows how they are aware that Byrne was that he was an intelligence asset. And so this is actually an old video right here. I'm going to play this one first, at least the first part of it. And this was a video from, I think, like Fox Business. And yeah, Fox Business. This was, I think, 6 or 7 years ago, probably around 2018 is my guess.
Citizen too. I'm a flag-waving hippie like Jerry Garcia. I'm a citizen, and I think that as a citizen we have duties too. And if everybody helped out a little bit when they had a chance, life would be much easier. I've helped out twice in my life. Once when a friend of mine got murdered, I helped a guy named Brian Williams, and if you Google his name and mine, you'll find this story. A friend of mine was murdered. I helped the feds bring the murderer to justice, and it was my honor to help them bring the murderer to justice. And I helped them back 2005 to 2010 take down Wall Street. And both catching my friend's murderer and taking on Wall Street were consistent with my values, and it was my honor to help the men in black then. And it was just this third time they came to me, and I got some requests. I didn't know who the hell it came from, and it was fishy. And 3 years later, I'm watching television, and I realized who it was. It was Peter Strzok and Andy McCabe, and that's who these orders came from.
By the way, just to make clear, that's not a Make America Great hat exactly, is it?
No, it isn't. What is it?
Make America Grateful Again, correct?
Right, with a Grateful Dead Steely.
Okay.
Look, when you see these lights,
Yeah, so he's on, and I think he's probably on drugs there too, just to be clear. I mean, his eyes are all bloodshot. He's got like foam in the corners of his mouth. Yeah, so I don't think that he's necessarily sober there either. But there he's actually acknowledging that he's taken orders from McCabe and Strzok. And that was probably 2018, 2019 when he said those things. So now let's go here, and then I've got one other clip that is pretty important.
Here in just a few seconds. And we're going to talk about some of the other touch points that brought us together, but also I think impacted Patrick in a way that, caused him to be asked more often by our government, elements inside of our national security state, to do things on behalf of the U.S. government. And
yeah, that's pretty shocking. So he says that Flynn there is acknowledging, and this is Flynn introducing Byrne on Flynn's own podcast, that it's a really lame podcast called Inside the Skiff. So he's introducing Byrne as somebody who has taken orders from the federal government, that the national security state, as he says, has asked him to do certain things. And he obviously, and he looks like he's very comfortable with that. And so, of course, that begs the question, is that how they met? And I think absolutely they met in the summer of 2020. David Hancock is an individual who has testified publicly, and he's stated publicly many times that he was hired by Linwood in like early 20. So in early 2020, Linwood hired him to do cybersecurity at Tomotley, which is Linwood's compound in South Carolina. And it was kind of like their command center for all of their activities, the Flynn's, Burns, Lindell's, Linwood's, City Powell's, all of their activities post-election. And what he's said is that it was Flynn that was directing and designing the cybersecurity, that, telling David Hancock what he needed to do. So David Hancock was working directly with Flynn, setting up cybersecurity at Tomotley in early to as I recall, I'm just going off of memory. I didn't look this up right before the show, but I think it's like March, April, May of 2020. And so it was like during the shutdown, that kind of time, like around the shutdown and the COVID shutdown. And so he was at Tomotley doing cybersecurity there, working with Flynn. And that's significant because there were meetings there at Tomotley, planning meetings before the election, where they were plotting and planning the machine fraud psyop, which was, as I've argued extensively, it was a misdirection ploy that had many different benefits to the deep state, particularly. It was misdirecting us from where the fraud really was, where I believe the fraud really was, if there was enough fraud if there was actually widespread fraud. It was in the voter rolls and illegal ballots, whether they're trafficked in various ways. But the way to find that would be through the voter rolls and through an actual well-organized and very broad canvas. There were a few canvassing efforts. I believe that they were heavily sabotaged, and oddly enough, they were all performed by people who had various ties to Flynn, like Liz Harris, in Arizona. So, yeah, so that is the machine fraud psyop. It also is an extraordinarily useful, and this is going to come into play here in this election cycle in 2026. It's an extraordinarily useful tool to disenfranchise only Republican voters. Because if you believe that the elections are determined by a flip of a switch somewhere and that they can flip votes and all that, there truly is no point in voting at all. And so I just kind of brand that it's all rigged, so what's the point in voting? It's all rigged, so what's the point? So there's that. So what we see here is that strongly suggests that Flynn knew that Byrne was CIA when they started working together. I think that's this definitely suggests that. I mean, what I just showed proves that he knew about this a year ago, but I strongly believe that they knew about this longer. And we're looking at 2016 and the Russiagate stuff. They were both doing the same kind of stuff then. In 2020, they were both at Tomotley in the summer of 2020. That's where they met. And so that just really strongly suggests that they were all brought together, that the whole thing was a CIA operation. And Patrick Byrne has committed many, many crimes. Just in that video on Emerald Robinson, he's admitting to multiple felonies, and he's even committing a felony. And what he said there, and shooting your commanding officer in the face, that is not protected speech, boys and girls. That is not protected speech. So this is, and then there's one other detail, and I don't have it handy right in front of me, but I do have a transcript from a hearing in the Dominion versus Byrne lawsuit, and I have published about it. I published about this about a year ago as well. That in the Dominion versus Byrne lawsuit, Stephanie Lambert was representing him before the court barred her and sanctioned her, which is another unusual thing. But Stephanie Lambert in that hearing told the court that her client, Patrick Byrne, she described him as a national intelligence asset. Later in that same hearing, the judge cleared the courtroom, everyone except for Stephanie Lambert, because the judge wanted to speak directly off the record to Stephanie Lambert, presumably about that comment. So, it is all quite odd. And it's also interesting that one of the beneficiaries of the sale of Dominion to this Liberty Vote, or whatever it's called now, is Patrick Byrne and Sidney Powell and all of the people that have been sued by Dominion. It looks like they will benefit greatly from that. As we'll see where those lawsuits end up going, but so that is that we have. I'm very much vindicated by Patrick Byrne actually coming out and saying very directly what I have been pointing to the evidence. I'm not just making stuff up. I'm looking at the evidence. I'm looking at what people tell me that have direct firsthand knowledge. Some of that I'm able to share, some of that I'm not, but I'm sharing what I can that's demonstrable and provable. And I've been saying for a long time, these people are feds. This is an intelligence operation against Americans. It's a very illegal intelligence operation against Americans, and it's got to stop. It's got to stop. And but unfortunately, I don't see that happening. And let's look at Tina Peters now, because this is central to this whole thing. And so we're going to see how the CIA set up Tina Peters and is using Tina Peters to try to stoke World War III in Venezuela. That sounds nuts, but I'm showing you what I see, and you can make up your own mind about what's really happening here. So, Tina Peters was entrapped by, let me rephrase this differently. Tina Peters was not just persuaded, I believe she was coerced by Patrick Byrne, Mike Lindell, Dr. Frank, Sharona Bishop, all of these people that were in her orbit, her own 24/7 security, who was an individual who looks strangely like Conan Hayes. I'm not sure that he is. I don't think he is. And that's a whole nother story. I did talk about that during her trial. How I identified somebody who was most likely one of her security people that was a special ops guy and sniper. And so he kind of identified himself as a funny story. But anyways, it was security very much like what 1AP did to Stacey Burke and to others that unfortunately I can't talk about, but it's the same exact story as Stacey Burke's, where a very similar story where they created the motivation in someone through like dark ops, like people following you in your car and making you think that there's somebody in the deep state that's tracking you, black SUVs following you, security, the phone lines being cut, that kind of stuff, like weird stuff that happens. And so you become paranoid, and then you have people that are planted by part of that network, like people like Sharona Bishop and people that had wormed their way in and were worming into her ear, and building in her a sense of, in Tina Peters, I presume, because it's the same thing that they did to Stacey Burke, and the fruit in terms of the way that they were able to mind control Tina Peters indicates strongly that they were building this sense of paranoia in Tina Peters systematically. I'm not saying it's one person's fault or another. This is a group effort that included people like Steve Bannon, who started platforming her and trying to build her up as this American hero and a gold star mom and somebody that everybody needs to listen to. And, yeah, I mean, it's all pretty disturbing stuff. So they coerced Tina Peters into doing what she did. And Kurt Olson, as a lawyer, and who brandishes his proximity to Trump as, you know, for to grift for influence and to as kind of like a calling card, convinced her that it was legal and necessary to hire Conan Hayes in particular to go into the Mesa County EMS room. Now, this is very significant because Conan Hayes, they claimed, and this is actually a declaration of Conan James Hayes that he signed at the beginning of her trial, Tina Peters' trial. And I'll read it. The declaration is really pretty absurd. We have this because Joe Altman himself released this, and as in his mind, this was somehow evidence that the judge was corrupt, which is ridiculous. At least it's ridiculous based on this. I do not believe that Tina Peters' judge was corrupt. I think that I think he actually made the right decisions pretty much at every turn. Every decision that he made, I watched the trial, was lawful. And Tina Peters did break the law. This is, he gave her a harsh sentence, but she and her attorneys, and I'll get into that more, but she and her attorneys actually are the reason why he gave her a hard sentence. And I'll show that. So this is declaration of Conan James Hayes. He says, I, Conan James Hayes, mailing address 5627 Canaan Road in Agora Hills, California. Guess what? That is a UPS store. And so it starts with the UPS store. This isn't, he just signed it. It's not an affidavit. An affidavit needs to be notarized. There's no notary. There's no way to confirm that this is actually his signature. And there's certainly no way to confirm that this is his address. It's obviously not his address. So from the start, and I recall during the trial, there was a point when I believe it was Dan Hartman was arguing with the judge over things that he wanted admitted. The jury had been excused for this, and Dan Hartman was trying to argue for things they wanted admitted. And one of these things was this declaration of Conan Hayes. They're trying to get this admitted, and I'm not sure how they thought that it would help her. I think that their argument was that he's not just that he's a Fed, but that he's a white hat. So he's a good guy, and therefore she was right to do what she did. And so I do not believe that he's a good guy. I don't believe that he was a white hat. But so he's saying, I have numerous computer and cybersecurity certifications. I am the founder of RVCA and C Prime. So, Rascals and Crash. So RVCA is a surfing, t-shirt company that he sold to Billabong, and C Prime makes, kids bicycle helmets. He's a founder of those two companies. I'm not sure how that helps build his case. He says, I have been read in or held government security clearances since 2018. Okay. There's no evidence that that's the case. He's just saying it. And again, we don't even know that this is a signature. I have previously worked in numerous capacities on extremely confidential government corruption operations, and was instrumental in the collapse of a massive international organized crime organization tied to the cartels. So, and this is the claim that there's no evidence that it's actually true, that he took down Backpage. That's the claim, that he took down Backpage. So he's a super duper white hat, extra special spy who, amazing mystery man of secret cybersecurity knowledge. And he was the only one for the job. According to Dr. Frank and Kurt Olson and Mike Lindell and Patrick Byrne, he was the only one for the job. He says, my identity has been protected in the past for the safety of myself and my family. I've been authorized to use alternative identities in past government-related work. These are some pretty big claims. Of course, no evidence. I began working with local public safety intelligence and counterterrorism division in September of 2020 and worked in collaboration with federal agencies. So he's actually acknowledging that he started working in September of 2020. Again, this lines up. Was he at Tomatli also? Was this part of, this is a public safety intelligence and counterterrorism division? Is this the CIA? Was this part of Burns' CIA operation? Because what Conan Hayes was doing was going around and getting illegal forensic images of Dominion hardware all over the country. He got at least 4 images before he ever went to Colorado, which really further underscores the tragedy of this whole thing with Tina Peters, is that nothing that she did was necessary. It wasn't necessary at all. There was no new information that came as a result of what she did. Number 7, I was given authorization to access voting equipment for the purpose of providing expert reports to local and federal law enforcement. Okay, again, I think this is CIA. And because, if that's true that he was given authorization, why not produce that authorization in order to exonerate Tina Peters? Why not actually produce evidence of it instead of just this stupid declaration? And this is what Joe Altman is claiming, corrupt judge, because this he was claiming would have exonerated Tina Peters. But the judge took one look at this and said, I can't admit this because none of it is verifiable, which is absolutely true. You can't even verify that it's his signature on here. It's certainly not his address. Like, the whole thing is bunk. This is bunk. This is not something that's admissible in court. And these people know this. Her attorneys knew this. Kurt Olson knew this. Stephanie Lambert, who has bragged about being the brains behind Tina Peters' legal defense, which is a weird thing to brag about. I came up with the legal theory that caused her to go to prison. We're living in clown world. It's so crazy. So this is Conan Hayes, right? So he's another Fed, apparently. And then was Lindell a Fed? If he was I don't know. I strongly, personally, that's my hunch. If it could be shown that he was at Tomatli too before the election, then I would say chances are he was in on it. He certainly has behaved as if he was in on it. And I know for a fact that when he stood out there, he stood in front of cameras right in January of 21, holding a folder with some basically nonsense paperwork in it and saying, I've got absolute proof that the election was stolen. The Supreme Court's going to vote 9-0. And by the way, that whole 9-0 thing, the Supreme Court, the attorney that was advising him on that, Kurt Olson. So that's all Kurt Olson. That 9-0 thing that ended up just going away and blowing into the wind, that's Kurt Olson. Kurt Olson is the one that Trump has hired to investigate the 2020 election. This is crazy stuff. This is absolutely crazy stuff. There is no... The best that I can guess as far as why Trump has hired him is because there's nobody else that's willing to. And it's personal to him. He wants to see that proven. And I get it. If I were in his position, I'd probably want to see that proven too. But there's a serious blind spot going on there. If he's hiring Kurt Olson, this is not good. I don't see that there's any good that can come of hiring Kurt Olson to do this job. And he said just the other day, there's going to be truckloads of evidence coming. Kurt Olson is behind that. It's Kurt Olson and Ed Martin that are behind that. And it's hard for me to imagine that would not be completely laced with poison pill fabricated nonsense that's going to kill the whole thing. Even if most of it's true. You put a few lies, you sprinkle it with lies. If there's enough lies in there, it's going to poison the whole well. and nobody's going to believe it. And it's going to cause Republicans to lose in a big way. I'm that's my concern. And then simultaneously, they're trying to dig up and create reason to impeach him, to make him do something that would give just cause for impeaching Trump. Let's move on to the next thing. So, we know that Tina Peters was, she was told that what she was doing was necessary to save the country. She had to preserve these election records, even though, as it came out in trial, she knew her deputy clerk had already saved 3 redundant copies of the election data. Now, there's much that's made of this trusted build thing, and it's something that is, most states require it, and it's actually necessary when you have software that's processing these elections. You can't just hold on to the old election data indefinitely. I mean, on that computer, it can't stay on that computer, because if it stays on that computer, then ultimately it's going to slow down, or the odds of it contaminating election data in some way and the next election or whatever. You can't have like multiple elections data on the same machine. And so the trusted build is this process where they just wipe everything clean and they re-image the computer. So they give it, and often what is happened is they actually just take an image of a computer from their, like the Secretary of State's main office or whatever, that's like the model computer. They just take that hard drive and then they just transfer that hard drive. Like they format the hard drive on the EMS server, and they just install this other hard drive that's all clean and ready for the next election. And that's actually, it's a standard process. It's not a corrupt process. There's no election data that she actually preserved. None. It was already preserved. There's nothing that her crimes resulted in giving us new information or any of that. And there truly isn't. There's nothing new that came out of this. And so what she ended up doing, and what they persuaded her, what Kurt Olson and Sharona Bishop was super tight with Lindell. Sharona Bishop actually was Lindell's campaign manager when he ran for RNC chair in 21. She also was close with Lauren Boebert, and it's just there's a lot of stuff there. They told her that what she had to do was to protect Conan Hayes' identity, because he's a super duper white hat, extra special white hat, super secret spy, and who took down Backpage. And so he was the only person that could do the job, though. He was the guy. Dr. Frank said in a recorded meeting that was played in the trial, that he said, I've got a team. It's the best team in the whole country, and they're going to do this. And that team, of course, included Conan Hayes as the guy that would get the images. Now, anybody could have done it. There was another county clerk in Colorado, who got a forensic image also. And he did it himself. And Mark Cook actually told him how to do it, was on the phone with him as he did it himself. So there was nothing unlawful about that. He could access that machine. He had the legal authority to do that. He didn't publish it. He didn't give it to the Gateway Pundit and Code Monkey Z, Ron Watkins. And he didn't have Conan Hayes go in and under Gerald Wood's identity, introducing himself to the Dominion employees and the Secretary of State people there as Gerald Wood, when he's really Conan Hayes. And and all of this was arranged by Tina Peters, where she hired Gerald Wood, knowing, for the purpose of giving his identity to Conan Hayes, giving his access card to Conan Hayes. This was fraud. She committed fraud. Tina Peters committed fraud. She was convicted by a jury of her peers. And so this is real. If she wanted, and the thing is that none of it is admissible in court. She had the computer, she had the security systems shut off completely for the whole week that this was going on during the trusted build, before and after, while Conan Hayes was there. So the security cameras are shut off. So we have no chain of custody whatsoever for these forensic images. We have no idea if he changed anything before, during, or after either of those forensic images. A forensic image is basically just a copy, an exact copy of everything that's on the hard drive. And so the name forensic image makes it sound like, well, it's forensic, so it must be good, right? It really just means it's a complete copy of that hard drive. But he could have changed something before, during, or after any of those forensic images, and we'd have no way of knowing. There is zero chain of custody, and there's no way that we know that he didn't go in and change something to make it look even worse, because there were some indications that things were changed, as far as there were log files that were missing or whatever. But that very easily could be that there were log files that were missing on the computer that was imaged in the first place, and that image is the one that was installed on the new went through the trusted build. So it doesn't prove anything. It doesn't even prove the vulnerabilities that they say it proves. So there's so much disinformation. She says that she is, and everybody says about her that she is she was just trying to prove the 2020 election was stolen. She was just asking questions. She was just trying to preserve the evidence. All of that is false. It is demonstrably false. And here's where it becomes a problem.
Million pills. It's amounted to billions of dollars worth of drugs. And last month we seized another 1.7 million fentanyl pills in the state of Colorado, the poorly run state of Colorado, with a governor who's incompetent. And frankly, with a governor that won't allow our wonderful Tina to come out of a jail, in a high-intensity jail, because she caught people cheating on an election, and they said she was cheating. She wasn't cheating. She went over, she looked at one of the election scams going on, and because she did that, they put her in jail for 9 years. The governor of Colorado.
So I think you can see this just isn't true. She's not in jail in 9 years because she looked at an election scam. Like there, she's tried to prove that there was fraud. Everything he's saying here is not true.
Is a weak and pathetic man who was run by Tren de Aragua, the criminals from Venezuela, took over sections of Colorado, and he was afraid to do anything. But he puts Tina in jail for 9 years because she caught people cheating. And when she walked over and got involved in it, they said she was cheating. She wasn't cheating. She caught people cheating on the election, 2020.
No, she did not. She did not catch anyone cheating. There is nothing, and this is a false statement. Trump is telling a lie. I don't think, to his credit, I don't think that he knows that it's a lie. I don't think like he's willingly trying to deceive. I think that he has people around him that are willfully trying to deceive him, and that's something that has played out before. I love Trump. I think Trump is doing really great work. I think what he's doing on securing the border and trying to remove these illegal immigrants that have come here illegally, I think that that's fantastic. I think that the work that he's doing to try to rebalance global trade and bring about an American renaissance in manufacturing, fantastic. I think that I think that's the most important issue in American politics right now. And this is something that's going to save us from it could save us from becoming a third world country. It's that important. And so I think he's doing fantastic work, but I think that he is maybe he knows what he's doing. And I hear people claim that he's putting people in the spotlight in order to somehow reveal the thing. The pardon that he did, and now let me talk briefly about this pardon. Trump pardoned Tina Peters. Now, he can pardon Tina Peters, but the president's pardon only applies to federal crimes. And it says so very clearly in Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution that the president has the authority to pardon anyone who is convicted of a crime against these United States. These United States, from the very beginning of this country, has always been very clearly understood as the federal government. These United States, all of the states together, the federal government. And this is why it was called the United States. We came together for federal purpose, but each state has its own autonomy. And the autonomy of state courts and states' rights has always been a central and vitally important issue. And it is unbelievable to me now that there are people who are so mind controlled over these lies about Tina Peters that they are now calling and demanding that Trump override another state's court system and legal system, another state's autonomy to run their courts, as the people there have more direct oversight to do. If we want to continue to live in the United States of America and enjoy the freedoms that we have, I think that we as conservatives need to appreciate state rights. And there is no way as Republicans that we can win the argument and maintain any level of moral authority if we give and relent on states' rights. If we promote tyranny, which is the federal government usurping by force a state's rights. So do I think that it's good? The lack of transparency that the Democrats really encourage and force upon our election system? Absolutely not. I'm not defending that at all. And this is part of the thing that I talked about, like red meat that the Democrats give that the Flynn network feeds off of. The lack of transparency in our election systems is bad. I think that we need better security. We need better transparency and better security in our election systems. Absolutely. But the state has to have, we have to be a defender of states' rights, even if the state is doing something that we disagree with. We can't claim to be constitutionalists and also encourage President Trump to go in and overrule a state court or attempt to in any way. So this pardon that Trump issued is absolutely meaningless unless Tina Peters is later indicted of federal felonies or federal crimes. That pardon has no legal bearing whatsoever, nor should it. Let me just continue to the end of this video here. And, let me go to the very beginning, because what's interesting is the remarks that he was giving on Tina Peters. It was very off the cuff, and he interjected it into a broader discussion about the Mexican and Venezuelan cartels. So let's look at how he opened this, and I want to look at how he ends this and brings it back away from Tina.
Million pills. It's amounted to billions of dollars worth of drugs. And last month we seized another 1.7 million fentanyl pills in the state of Colorado, the poorly run state of Colorado, with a governor who's incompetent.
Okay, so he's talking about fentanyl, and then all of a sudden he talks about Colorado. So it's really clear that Colorado and Tina Peters is very much on his mind, and he's associating the cartels and the drugs and everything in Venezuela with Tina Peters. And then he brings it back to that at the end of this.
She was cheating. She wasn't cheating. She caught people cheating on the election, 2020, along with a lot of other people that cheated on that election. You'll see that coming out more and more.
Okay, so he's equating, he's bringing together 2020 election, Tina Peters, and Venezuela, all these things together. This is concerning, and concerning to me, and I'm going to share why, and you can make your own decisions. You can come to your own conclusions. but I will share the conclusion I come to, and you're welcome to come to your own. Okay, so this is the same day that Patrick Byrne. So a week ago Monday, Patrick Byrne at 1:00 in the morning, he posted that he just got permission to share something. He goes on Emerald, says he's CIA. Goes on InfoWars with Alex Jones, says he's CIA. And then he immediately starts arguing for a war in Venezuela. And this is before Trump did what he did yesterday, which is he posted through social saying that they were doing kind of an embargo on Venezuela. They weren't going to allow any sanctioned oil to come or go from Venezuela. And which is fine. It's not necessarily an act of war. It's just enforcing the sanctions that have already been imposed on Venezuela. I saw him making this admission, and making an admission like that really hurts. It's like, this is something that it hurts his cause. It is better for him and for the Flynn network, for the world not to know that Patrick Byrne is CIA. Clearly, it's clearly better for them. And so there's obviously reason to make that admission. And I think that very likely it's a limited hangout in part. Like, he's dangling out a part of the truth in anticipation that this is all going to actually come out. And so he wants to dangle out this part of the truth to inoculate his followers against the whole damning truth that will be coming out. And I think that the whole truth is that he's still CIA, and it didn't end in 2016, like he said, and it's continuing today, and that everything that he has done with and Flynn has done with the Reawaken tour and all of the election integrity stuff, all of that is a CIA operation. And I absolutely believe that. The evidence has led me to believe that it's all a CIA operation. And his admission here just, I haven't come out and said it's CIA. I've said it's intelligence community. But that he admits that he's working for the CIA indicates that, yeah, this is probably CIA. I mean, it's CIA kind of stuff. It always has been. But so it's like, why are they doing this? What's so important that is causing them to do this? So part, I think, is limited hangout, but then he immediately starts arguing for going to war with Venezuela. This is his argument. And I forget who this is. You're welcome to remind me. I put it in the comments. But that doesn't matter. He's making what is a pretty decent point. Like, okay, you're arguing that Americans willfully put their sons and daughters' lives at risk and go to war in Venezuela. That's what you're calling for, is an actual kinetic war in Venezuela. You want boots on the ground there. And that's what he's arguing for. So why? Why is that? What is worth their deaths? Here's his answer.
They're dying for it because Venezuela committed not just an act of war against us, an act of conquest. They overthrew us. They held us for 4 years. They had a stoop who opened the gates of the city on the hill, and 20 million military men showed up. It was a stage in the conquest. There's never been, I think, since the American Revolution, there's not been a more necessary war since maybe the Civil War. This is more necessary than World War I or World War II. This was an attack on the United States, a existential attack, and we barely escaped it. This isn't some battlefield 5,000 miles away. This happened right here, and it's going to happen again.
Okay, I'm going to play this.
Conquest. There's never been, I think, since the American Revolution, there's not been a more necessary war since maybe the Civil War. This is more necessary than World War I or World War II. This was an attack on the United States, a existential attack, and we barely escaped it. This isn't some battlefield 5,000 miles away. This happened right here, and it's going to happen again.
Okay, so he's saying that this attack, and I'm going to tell you what he's meaning by this attack, but he's saying this attack on the United States, which was, it's a direct reference to everything that he's been talking about since, for the last 3 weeks, and is a thread that Emerald Robinson has put out. And I'm actually going to read the first 25 or so posts of that thread because, for one, I think it's entertaining as heck. and two, you've got to know what they're doing and what because the way that they rolled the whole thing out, and the whole Flynn network was sharing it on X in a very coordinated way. And Patrick Byrne's there saying, "Here it comes. This is the thing. This is the big kahuna." And it's very clear that this is a very important narrative to them, and it's all narrative. And he's saying that this makes it more that war in Venezuela, us actually going to war, not a blockade, us actually going to war and risking our own service members' lives, um, and killing other people is more necessary than any other war since the Civil War, and probably more than the Civil War. Really, what he's really saying is any war since the Revolutionary War. Like that's how necessary going to war with Venezuela is in Patrick Byrne's mind. So now we're going back. I scrolled all the way back to November 24th, and that is when Emerald Robinson started telling the story. And I follow Emerald Robinson because she's kind of the tip of the spear for the Flynn narratives, the Flynn Network narratives. I say Emerald Robinson, the Hodge twins, Ivan Raiklin, Ann Vandersteel, and of course Flynn and Patrick Byrne. If you want to know what the Flynn Network is doing, follow those accounts and you'll get a pretty good idea. But I would say especially Flynn, Byrne, Ann Vandersteel, Raiklin, Emerald Robinson. I think that all of them in particular, they're very closely linked to the intelligence community, and the way that you can really see in what they post what the narrative of the day is. And you can also see very clearly how much they absolutely hate Trump. So anyways, let's read the story. Now, I am going to read the story as it is written, which is as a children's book. This is written as I see this. This is written as a children's book. And you will see that there is not a single shred of evidence, but I'm going to have fun reading this. And I think it'll make it fun to listen to. It's time to tell you the story about how the 2024 election fraud was stopped. Are you ready? A few weeks before the 2024 election, Senator Mullen and former Senator David Perdue finally arranged a meeting between Trump advisor Susie Wiles and the one man who could explain exactly how America's election systems are rigged. The meeting took place at Mar-a-Lago. Susie Wiles had publicly said that election fraud was not real and that people who thought so were crazy. After the briefing, she didn't know what to think. She asked for a piece of cake. She ate it slowly. Then she made the decision Trump's team should be briefed too. Again, she's calling this journalism. All right, let's continue. In the end, the man stayed at Mar-a-Lago for 3 days to brief everyone. There was only one man who Wiles trusted to confirm it all: Elon Musk. A call was made. The man found himself in a room with Musk. Musk declined to sit through a full briefing. Just give me your data. So Elon Musk read the AI summary of the technical data, and then he picked up his phone and made a call. We have a problem. It's true. Then Musk got on a plane to host a Trump rally in Pennsylvania. It was October 17th, 2024. Musk got on stage and attacked Dominion. Now, I want to interject here a little bit. So Patrick Byrne then went on Emerald Robinson's show, and the whole time she's having Patrick Byrne on the show like all the time. And as she's dribbling these out, just a little bit at a time, she's teasing the next one. This is all coming out in installments. We just read part 4 out of about 25 that I'm going to read. So bear with me. I think it's fun. Patrick Byrne described this as what happened here with Elon Musk is that Elon Musk, there was a 3.5 hour long presentation that this man who's unnamed throughout it, and I believe that it's a guy named Martin, a Venezuelan person named Martin, who was traveling around with Gary Bernstein, who I believe is a fraud and a liar, and he's former CIA. Patrick Byrne just admitted to being a liar. He and Gary Bernstein were assigned to work together, I believe, by the CIA. It's all full of lies and full of crap. There is no data. Okay. So, but what their claim is here, this is their claim that Patrick Byrne elaborated on, that Martin had this 3.5 hour presentation Elon didn't want to sit through 3.5 hour long slideshow presentation. So he says, just give me your data. Because he claims in his presentation that he's got like millions of pages of documents to back the whole thing up, to prove the whole thing. And so it's this long presentation, and he claims that he has evidence to back it up. But he doesn't actually show the evidence. But Elon just cut right to the chase and said, give me the evidence. Let me look at it. And then what Patrick Byrne claims is that, so the first part's credible, that fits with what we know about Elon's personality. So then he takes this data, and apparently, according to Patrick Byrne, he puts it into, and this is like early 2024 or maybe earlier. So this says October 17th, 24. So this is around October of 24. And he feeds it into AI, millions of documents, apparently on a thumb drive or something, feeds it into AI. And AI, Patrick Byrne said, 40 minutes later, spits out an executive summary. He reads that and he says, Houston, we have a problem. And I don't buy it. I mean, if I were Elon Musk, I would be calling that out in a heartbeat because it makes him look like an idiot. I mean, you can't. I use AI a lot because I'm assimilating a lot of information, and first of all, I find Grok to be radically inferior to ChatGPT. Like its processing capability, its accuracy, its reliability. I get so many errors when I use Grok. I get far fewer errors when I use ChatGPT. That's my experience. And maybe Elon Musk has had and has always had access to like a space age version of Grok. Maybe that's true. Okay. But the reality is that machine learning that is operating there, it's not like there's a more advanced model that he would have access to. It's not likely that that's the case from what I understand about AI. It would be the same model, it just with more computing power and more resources devoted to it. So it would be faster. So today, the most documents that I can give, the most advanced, and I have a pro account with ChatGPT, and the most documents that I can really feed it before it starts forgetting stuff is in the hundreds. Patrick Byrne is claiming that he fed it millions of documents, and in 40 minutes, it gave him an executive summary. So one, you can't trust AI to just process 4.5 million documents and then give you an AI summary and then say, yep, that means it's true. This is our proof. I mean, it's absurd. It's absurd. And I find it beyond credibility. I don't think it's plausible at all that over a year ago that any AI could have in 40 minutes gone through and assimilated millions of documents and come to a true reasoned conclusion based on that. I think that there's a lot of interpretation. There's all kinds of other stuff that has to happen when you're accessing data like that. I just don't believe it. I don't believe that this is even remotely true. Not even it's not even plausible. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, I'm going to continue. Part 5. Elon Musk said at this rally. Again, we're back at the rally on October 17th, 2024. This is her proof, of course. This is the closest thing that we come to so far of evidence. Elon Musk said at the rally, there's always been the question of Dominion voting machines. It's weird that they're used in Philadelphia and Maricopa County, but not in a lot of other places. Doesn't that seem like a heck of a coincidence? I'm not sure what he's saying there, maybe that's what he actually said, but what is that even supposed to mean? Like, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't support her thesis here, which we will get into. Musk was warning us. The system was rigged. Okay, so that's what it says. And now she reposts Patrick Byrne in real time saying, Emerald is breaking the story at last. Number 6, part 6. How could the 2024 steal be stopped a few weeks before the election? The man who briefed Musk had a team. Patrick Byrne and Gary Bernstein. Oh, so the man who briefed Musk, again, I think this is Martine. It was with Patrick Byrne and Gary Bernstein, 2 CIA guys. So we're supposed to believe their accounts. This whole thing is based on us believing a Venezuelan national who we don't know anything about his background and anything real. And she's not even telling us who it is. And Patrick Byrne and Gary Bernstein. Okay. So she says the team had recruited 12 people who knew how the rigged system was built in Venezuela. They had worked for Smartmatic and Maduro. Okay, so that means they know because they work for Smartmatic, right? Okay. 7. This group of whistleblowers were hiding in a hotel in Gstaad, Switzerland before the 24 election. That's where General Flynn flew in to see them. Flynn asked, "How long has election fraud been going on?" They said, "Venezuela now rigs it in 72 countries for the last 20 years. Oh, and this is where we really need to bring some critical thinking to this whole claim, which was, the same claim was around right after the 2020 election. They had it pre-planned. They had a interview with a guy named Lindsay Salazar, that had many factually false statements included in this video. And of course, Sidney Powell arranged for this video to be produced, shot, and recorded and everything before the election even happened. And in it, Lindsay Salazar is claiming that Smartmatic was started by Hugo Chavez in order to rig the Venezuelan elections. Now, that part of it may be at least partly true. It may be entirely true. That part of it may be true. I think there's definitely fraud in Venezuelan elections. I think Smartmatic probably had something to do with it. But here's where it goes off the rails. So then they say, well, Smartmatic then was sold to another company, and then that company was sold to another company, and that company was sold to Dominion. And so therefore, they claim Dominion is still running this 20-year-old software, and Venezuela has a backdoor because it owned the software 20 years ago and had built the software 20 years ago. They have a backdoor into every election server in the United States and can flip elections, and all over the world in 72 countries, apparently, right? Please, this is not a credible claim, and there is zero evidence to support it. Big claim needs big evidence. They have none. There is none. They claim that they've got millions of documents. Put them out there. Show us. All right, let's go on. Number 8, the whistleblowers from Venezuela. The whistleblowers. I'm sorry, I forgot I'm reading a children's book. The whistleblowers from Venezuela had video meetings with Musk's team and Trump's team to explain the technical details of the election fraud. The most important detail: the Dominion IP addresses have been located. All it cost was $15 in Bitcoin from an anonymous Japanese account. Oh, and then she later shared a screenshot of a text message that she claims is proof of that, but it absolutely doesn't prove that. It's just, the text message doesn't even make any sense. It actually looks like a spam text message, like from some spammer, con artist or something. It does not make any sense at all. And it's not proof of what she says at all. This is not journalism, folks. This is not journalism. Okay. Number 9, the relevant data and IP addresses were now verified. That's when Senator Mullen came to the rescue again. A cybersecurity team got the data. 3 days before the 24 election, the Dominion office in Serbia was hit. Their computers were useless. Okay, let's go on, and then we'll look at this claim. On election day, nobody knew if the cybersecurity team had been successful knocking out the Serbian computers. Everybody at Mar-a-Lago had to wait for the results without certainty. Oh, that's what you do in an election, guys. The man who had briefed Musk flew to Oslo that day. His team would flee the United States if they failed. Imagine the moment on election day. Trump had no idea if he would win. So Patrick Byrne watched the results from Qatar. Gary Bernstein watched the results from Switzerland. All of them would be hunted down if the 24 election fraud was successful. And the USA would be finished. So their claim is that apparently Dominion had Serbian servers, and it sounds like election data was routed through those servers, and that they were going to use those servers to somehow flip the election results or something. And Gary Bernstein has gone on Laura Logan's show, making the most, you can watch it. It's 2 hours. I guarantee it'll make you dumber. It'll drop your IQ. It is so stupid. But he actually claims, this is his actual claim when he's talking with Laura Logan, and he talks around it and like it doesn't make sense. His claim is that they algorithmically or otherwise stole the election in different ways in every single county. So every single county is different. So apparently they ran 3,000 different algorithms all across the country, and it's different every county. And so if you say that it's the perfect conspiracy theory, because you can neither verify it nor can you refute it. Because you can say, well, that's not what they do here. I've looked at my county. Oh, but you didn't look at my county, so you don't know what they did there. And this is what they're doing. And people believe this stuff. It's a rejection of logic. We need to hold fast to logic, to the principles of logic, which is an examination of the evidence, looking at the evidence carefully, and being very careful about the dots that we're connecting along the way to make sure that each one is supported by evidence. We can't make leaps like Venezuela started Smartmatic, therefore Smart Venezuela runs Dominion. It's been sold how many times between then? They can't make that. That's a leap in logic. It's a logical fallacy. You can't do that. But these people do that, and yeah. All right. So back to election day. Number 12. Trump was upset with his own staff after Elon Musk verified the fraud was real. He'd been gaslit for 4 years by his team to drop the topic. In fact, his staff hired a human intelligence asset in 2020 to investigate the fraud, to lie to Trump that our elections were fair. They hired a Cuban intelligence asset? Okay. All right, let's go on. But then that's the thing about Trump. He always hired the wrong people. His own advisors had tried to keep Trump from meeting with the team that saved the 24 election. How could Trump do something so stupid as not meet with two former CIA liars and some Venezuelan national, and Flynn, of course, who was the cause, along with Byrne, of Russiagate. Okay, so he says, and then she names names. People like Boris Epstein and Chris LaCivita had blocked the truth at every turn. Dun dun dun. She says, I'm posting, and the way that she does this thread is, it's not like a thread. It's just individual posts, each with a number. So she's explaining herself here. She says, I'm posting tweets one at a time so that X cannot hide or deboost the entire thread. My sources, the team that saved the 24 election. So her sources is circular reporting. Her sources are Byrne, a self-admitted liar, Gary Bernstein, who I'm calling a fraud, and based alone on that interview with Laura Logan, it's absurd. And then some Martin, who is a Venezuelan intelligence asset, and you're supposed to believe these people. These are the sources. And Flynn, these are the sources. Come on. This is not evidence. Now it gets even better. She says, my proof: Venezuela is now surrounded by American warships. So, okay. So that proves it, right? That proves it. Okay. That does not prove it. I'm sorry, that does not prove it. That's not proof. And especially at that time in November, I mean, everything that we're being told, even up until just 2 days ago, is that this is all about drugs. So, and narco terrorism and all that. So, all right, let's go on. Drugs and the cartels. 14. Let's call the team that saved the 24 election the Three Musketeers. That's the man with the brief. That's the man who briefed Musk, Gary Bernstein, and Patrick Byrne. I've now interviewed them many times, along with Smartmatic whistleblowers from Venezuela. I've confirmed key facts with the ODNI. So ODNI is Tulsi Gabbard's office. I've expressed many times that I have deep, deep concerns with Tulsi Gabbard. And I would say that when her name was first mentioned by Trump, when she was appointed to that position, I was watching Patrick Byrne on Emerald Robinson's show, and it'd be great to go back and find it. He was just giddy. He was absolutely giddy. And it just he was just overjoyed that she so I think, and that was a huge concern. There are many other concerns. I mean, she was a Democrat, ran for president with not the endorsement, because they officially endorsed Bernie Sanders, but she had a lot of support within the what is it? The Democrat Socialists of America, which is a communist organization. She had a close friendship, documented friendship, with the one of the chief propagandists from North Korea, who lives in Hawaii, and so from her, she had a close friendship with this North Korean propagandist. This was just a few years ago that she was running for president with the, as a Democrat and far left. And she claims that she's made a switch and, she moved over to Trump. And I think a lot of center left Democrats came over and voted for Trump because of Tulsi Gabbard, which I think that's great. That's great. I hope Trump to win. And I think, hopefully in the end, that's a good thing. But I just, largely because of the proximity, not just Patrick Byrne, Ivan Raiklin, Flynn, they all love Tulsi Gabbard. And then Tulsi Gabbard was also running interference directly, putting out anti-war propaganda starting a week before Trump's bombing of Iran earlier this year. And she was putting out propaganda like the end of the world is coming and we're about to face a nuclear holocaust if we bomb Iran. That's what she was putting out a week before Trump did this. And she was also declaring publicly that there was no evidence that Iran was developing nuclear weapons. So she was directly contradicting Trump's work at that time, before that bombing of Iran. So there's a lot of reasons why I don't like Tulsi Gabbard. And so she's saying now she's confirmed key facts with ODNI, and that's probably with Tulsi directly or somebody directly associated with Tulsi. Okay, 15. Here's where the story gets really wild. The Three Musketeers were also the ones who warned Trump about election fraud after the 2020 election. Where do you think Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani got their information about Smartmatic? And Judge Jeanine got them connected. So she's name dropping. Of course, Sidney Powell's part of their whole propaganda thing. And I think Rudy Giuliani just kind of got roped into it for lots of reasons, but that's another story. 16. So Trump had good intel. She reposts Patrick Byrne. This is the big one. Tune in. So this is the big one. This is the big kahuna. So Trump had good intel about the fraud 2 days after the 2020 election. So of course, what they were saying, because Sidney Powell was talking about, and Sidney Powell was part of this whole thing. I mean, she had been representing Flynn. She was part of this intelligence operation for sure. And so what she's claiming is that they briefed Giuliani and Trump 2 days after the election, saying that this was all Venezuela back then, which, again, there's no evidence that Venezuela continues to have anything to do with our elections or has any access to our election systems. Where is the evidence of that? It's stories. We're just given stories. And it's a children's story, for crying out loud. Okay. So, but then Trump called in Kushner to gather the legal team and handle it all. Kushner's team was briefed the next day, but they dismissed the intel and did nothing. Rudy and Sidney were hung out to dry with no help. 17. Let's return to 2024. Trump has won. It's Christmas. The whistleblowers from Venezuela are moved from Gstaad to Bahamas on tourist visas. To protect them, they're being hunted by the cartel. They need to get into the USA to testify and bring down the rigged voting machines, because, of course, their testimony would bring down the rigged voting machines, right? Of course. It's February 2025. Time is now up. With their visas expired, the whistleblowers would be sent back to Venezuela and killed. So Patrick Byrne got a catamaran out of Florida and sailed in the worst storm imaginable to the Bahamas in order to smuggle them all illegally into the United States. What a hero! What an adventurer! What a human trafficker! Oh, and I wonder to what extent the CIA was involved with that too, right? Of course, I'm sure they were involved in all this. 19. Why is this happening? After all, Trump's now back in office. The most important whistleblowers in American history are stranded because Team Trump does not have its act together again. She absolutely despises Trump. It's so clear. Finally, Tom Homan saves the day and sends 2 guys from D.C. to bring them all into the United States. Yay, Tom Homan, former director of the America Project. Of course, sure, they're going to plug him. Number 20. It's April. Trump authorizes task force on election fraud. DOJ, CIA, DHS, DNI guys meet the whistleblowers. Then the agencies start a fight over who has control of the investigation. None of those guys return for interviews or casework. They disappear. Team Trump fails again. 21. It's not really funny, is it? What's going on exactly? Our intel agencies are so compromised that none of them really want to investigate election fraud because they're involved in rigging the elections too. And Trump didn't bother to fire all those people. It's June. 2 whistleblowers are so upset with the handling of the investigation, they leave the United States in secret. It's all about to fall apart. Tulsi has to bring new guys from the 3-letter agencies to start all over. Whoops. I hit my Christmas tree. Those guys are shocked beyond belief after the interviews. Shocked beyond belief. 23. It's July. The investigation report is done. Tulsi prepares to bring the full report on 2020 and 24 to Trump. Trump's own White House advisors tell Tulsi to not include the 2020 evidence. So she gives Trump a partial report. Trump is now angry with Tulsi. And I think this is also when it was after this that Trump ended up hiring Kurt Olson. So Trump gets tired of waiting for these reports since he wants to know if Venezuela really runs America's elections. Come on. We got to know, right? Who does he finally call to brief him? Well, the 3 Musketeers, of course. Not the CIA or the DNI. That's when Trump decides it's time to overthrow Maduro. Now, this may be true. this part of the story may be true. And like with the video that I put out before, it may be true. I mean, it's pretty clear. Trump's sitting there, he's talking about Venezuela, and then his mind goes to Tina Peters. There's not a natural connection unless he's been fed propaganda. And I've been saying for a long time, Trump is the ultimate target of all of these psyops. I'm just going to finish with this one, episode 25 on this. She's at like 58 or something. They end up spiraling into weirdness. And there's not much that's really that helpful. They go into a testimony of one of these so-called whistleblowers that doesn't actually say what she says that it says. He doesn't say that Smartmatic is controlling the world's elections. He doesn't say that Smartmatic is even connected to Dominion. He doesn't say that at all. He just says that Smartmatic was stealing the elections in Venezuela when he was working for Hugo Chavez 20 years ago. Okay, so 25. How did the Three Musketeers do all of this? Well, Patrick Byrne spent $80 million to protect America. Houses, cars, Bitcoin, all gone now. Gary Bernstein mortgaged his house. Oh, like the rest of us? They're all broke now. No one has been paid back by Trump or Trump's administration at all. Not 1 cent. How dirty of Trump, huh? So they need to, you know what? They just need to start another Give, Send, Go. So I wanted to read all of this because it's so clear. This is not journalism. This is emotional manipulation. And while it's funny, like I laughed at it, and maybe you did too. It's funny. It's also really concerning because I think it's having its impact. I mean, I'm very concerned that Trump is believing these people. And Venezuela is, it's no, like, I mean, it sounds like a small country, you know, what does it really matter? So 90%, I did a little bit of research on this. 90% of the oil, Venezuela is very rich in oil. 90% of the oil produced in Venezuela is sold to China. We had, and Trump says that this embargo is going to continue until we get our land, oil, and assets back. And so what does he mean by that? He means there were American companies, primarily ExxonMobil, multinational companies, and if you can still call them American companies, ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips, that had developed oil drilling enterprises down there and refineries. I think the refineries are still here. They set up oil drilling and processing and whatever. And so they invested quite a bit of money. And then when Hugo Chavez took over, he nationalized all of it. He took it all over. And so for a little bit, the government kind of milked the cash cow, but it takes continuous work and expertise and innovation to continue to make, to produce oil at a high level. And of course, the government's never capable of doing innovation and smart work. It just doesn't happen. And so China came in, and Venezuela now owes China. Estimates are between 10 and 16 billion. And in addition to that, China has also built additional infrastructure and oil wells and so forth that it has long-term, like 20-year plus contracts on. And so the indebtedness to China is deeper than the 10 to 16 billion dollars. Now, and in November, just this last month, Venezuela they were producing about 750,000 barrels per day. That's a lot of oil that they were shipping to China. So 750,000 barrels per day in November of this year went to China. They're going to try to shut that off. Now, this doesn't mean, I mean, this is part of a broader trade war. This doesn't mean that we're going to World War III. I hope. Even with all of that oil, that's still less than right around 4% of the total amount of oil that China imports. So it's not like it's so much that they can't make it up somewhere else. So it's not so much that it's going to push China into going to war with us over this. So there's a lot of let's see what's going to happen. I think that this is kind of like grabbing leverage, and I do believe that China is a real threat, and I'm sure there's a whole lot more that's going on between us and China that we just don't know about. And so I'm willing to give Trump the benefit of the doubt on that. And we'll see what happens. I mean, that's really all we can do is we will see what happens. But I am very much concerned. We have a lot of this, the purpose of this propaganda, and on a daily basis, Patrick Byrne is continuing to go on Emerald Ramen Show, on Alex Jones, and anywhere else that'll have him to talk about Venezuela and how important it is that we go in and we've got to start a war with Venezuela in order to have free elections. And so they're using this, the mind control that they've done, the emotional manipulation that they've done on a large group of Americans to believe that our election systems are hopelessly rigged, cause them to believe that it's Venezuela without any real evidence that is responsible for it, and trying to promote the argument that unless we go to war with Venezuela, then we're not going to have free elections. And so they're trying to create this as a timely thing. They want this to happen now. I believe that everything that they're doing and everything that they've done since the election, and I remember having a conversation, I think I said on my podcast too, that what's coming, we right after Trump won, like this is fantastic, this is great. And so the question, and I remember that I got questions. All right, so what's Flynn going to do now that Trump won? Well, he's going to start working on 26, on causing us to lose in 26. And that's what I said then. And it's very clear that that's what's going on. And not only are they trying to cause Trump to do, not only trying to cause Republicans to lose in 26 by running lunatic candidates, and promoting these candidates and they're setting up purity tests. And if a candidate, if the eventual Republican nominee doesn't adopt everything on their purity test list, then they're going to actually campaign against them and for the Democrat. And there's libertarian groups in Michigan and around the country that are doing this very thing right now. They're threatening this very thing right now, and they're going to do it. They're going to follow through with it because they did it in 24. That's how we got. That's how Mike Rogers lost, the Republican for Senate in Michigan in 24. And these people have actually bragged about it. These libertarians have actually bragged about being the cause of Mike Rogers losing and giving us Haley Stevens, who was one of the senators that said, that started a lot of this with that video that said, disobey your any unlawful orders, disobey the president of the United States. So, they want Trump to lose. They want they're trying to cause him to do things that would cause him to be impeached. And so here is an example. Okay, so this is a news report, and I think for the most part, I'm sure I don't agree with Kyle Clark politically, but I think for the most part, what he has been doing here with his coverage of Tina Peters has been factual. Where I tend to disagree with him is when he tries to tie it all to Trump. But of course, Trump's making that easier and easier to do, unfortunately. But let's go ahead and play this. This was done about a week ago, and it includes some pretty important clips.
Tina Peters' attorney said today he is very optimistic that something is in the works to free her from prison, where she's serving time for tampering with Colorado's election systems. And he agreed that military tribunals and mass hangings are coming, issuing a direct warning to the judges and elected officials keeping Peters in prison.
You've done it. And don't think that there are going to be no consequences for it, because I don't care if you're a judge, I don't care what you are. If you're a traitor to this country, you don't get excused because you have a black robe on or because you're a secretary of a state someplace. You better wake up. Because
Tina Peters.
Again, this is Tina Peters, appellate attorney. This is Tina Peters, appellate attorney, saying, I don't care if you have a black robe on, that doesn't excuse you from treason. And so he's running her appeal, and he's accusing the judges in Colorado, including the appellate judge, of treason and claiming that there needs to be military tribunals, as we'll see.
Tina Peters' attorney, Peter Tickton, was on today with MAGA podcaster Joe Oltmann from Douglas County. Peters, of course, was convicted by a Republican district attorney and a jury in Mesa County for tampering with voting systems in an attempt to prove President Trump's claims of election rigging. Oltmann, who is a close ally of Peters, has publicly called for the executions of Colorado's Democratic governor, Secretary of State, and Attorney General, saying they are a, quote, synagogue of Satan Jews. Today, Oltmann and Peters' attorney talked about their shared vision for civilians to be rounded up, tried by military tribunals, and executed.
Why is the Insurrection Act not on the table? Why are we just not getting to the fact where we have military tribunals and 50,000 people that would get rounded up and we can just have a hanging party?
It's coming. It's coming with the evidence. It's coming.
I mean, this is rounding up 50,000 people, judge, jury, and executioner having a hanging party, and Joe Oltmann's laughing about it. He also said less than 2 weeks ago, he said that violence is the only answer at this point. And I posted about that.
It's coming with the proof.
We have had the proof for 4 years.
President Trump has railed against the state of Colorado for months for not releasing Peters on his demand.
Okay, so like I said, Trump is making it easy to for these people, for the left and the mainstream media, to attack him on this by associating with them. And this pardon, I believe, was an absolute mistake. And I know that many of my listeners think that it's not a mistake, that he's somehow like he's giving them what they wanted, and so therefore he's proving that he can't actually pardon Tina Peters. Let's just let this play out. Okay, yeah, I mean, we can do nothing but let it play out. But I strongly believe that honest and courageous, truth-oriented leadership starts with telling the truth. And there is no president in the history of the United States, nearly 250 years, who has even attempted to pardon state convicts or people accused of state crimes until a couple months ago, when Ed Martin wrote up this garbage blanket pardon for anybody that was involved with the alternate electors. All of them were indicted on state charges, not federal charges. And if anything, that blanket pardon actually hurts them. As like here in Michigan, I know that many of them are working on building civil cases to sue the state for wrongful prosecution. And this pardon that Ed Martin wrote, which really it pardons anybody that was involved with the alternate electors. And I believe that was a pardon that Flynn and Patrick Byrne and Sidney Powell would utilize if they were indicted of the crimes that they committed, of injecting false evidence. This whole, like, I think it's a big RICO thing. And if they were ever indicted of that, I think that they would point to this pardon and say that it covers them. And I think that it was deliberately, there was all kinds of vagary that was written into it by Ed Martin for that purpose. And of course, it's Ed Martin that helped to secure Flynn's pardon in 2020, in November of 2020. He was, it's on the record that he was texting people throughout Trump's orbit trying to pressure for that. And then he also was one of the leading pressure voices on the blanket pardons for all J6ers, which I strongly opposed. And that was a very similar propaganda campaign to try to force that into happening. And I opposed it because I wanted to see a line-by-line careful accounting of everybody that was there, because there were bad actors in the mix. And also I didn't want to see a blanket pardon that would pardon Flynn and Roger Stone and all these people that organized, and Ivan Raiklin. I mean, Ivan Raiklin, he has publicly said that all the violence that happened that day was his fault, and he was working for the DIA that day. So he's acknowledged that. He admitted that on Jake Lang's show, that he's working for the DIA. All right. So I just did a massive brain dump. I dumped 2 weeks worth of information here in 2 hours. And there's a lot more to cover, especially when it comes to Tina Peters' case. I am working on something. I said I can't divulge exactly what that is. I would very much appreciate your support, and I promise I will put it to good use. and it's the only thing that I can think of that could possibly help Tina Peters at this point. And so I've been working very hard at it, and it's going to cost some money. So I'm hopeful that, you know, if you can support me, I'd sure appreciate it. If you're already a subscriber, thank you, and please consider giving a subscription as a gift to somebody that you think might value it. Until next time, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.